So as I had discipline on my mind, preparing for the episode, I was trying to think of what it means to me and how we can think about the concept in a tightly packaged thought, right? Something simple, but makes us think and challenges us. So here is what I came up with about how we can think about discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, for the right reason. The last part here, people, is very meaningful and maybe encapsulates more of a purposeful intention of the work we are doing to be more disciplined. If we consider the why in our work, the why for the what and when and maybe how we do our work, right? Our calling may be more reachable, more fulfilling and meaningful if we have our why aligned with the work we are doing. My name is Michael Shikatano, and this is Right Here, Right Now, a podcast to inspire the learner inside each of us. In a world that is full of so much information, we will help find and package that information so that you can use it in your lives every day in practical ways. And in each episode, we will remind you of the importance of being present and mindful of your daily thoughts, actions, and interactions. It is truly the most vital step to learning and growth, being mindful and present right here, right now, to take on life's challenges and turn them into life's lessons. So come on this venture with us, a new beginning, a new journey that starts right here, right now. Welcome back, people. I am Michael Shikatano, your host of Right Here, Right Now, the podcast that has taught me that working hard is a consistent and deliberate way of life. The podcast that has taught me that some things are more challenging to get done than others. The podcast that has taught me that purpose and meaning help us down the path with deliberate and passionate intention. The podcast that has hopefully taught each of you that being mindful and present and aware of what we need to pay attention to is the first step on our journey of getting things done. The journey of getting the right things done right here, right now. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope that you are enjoying the journey we are on together. I am so excited for some of the feedback that I have recently received on the podcast, specifically on some of our last few episodes on self-love and resilience, and of course, the mindfulness intentions on self-love. Also, the episode with all of the amazing quotes on how we can better think about the way we think in our daily lives. The impact that some of my work has had on some of you is incredible. And when that impact that it has on some of you specifically is shared with me personally, it is just, wow, so wonderful to hear. It's actually emotional, quite humbling, and it really, quite frankly, lights a fire within me to keep learning and growing and evolving, and of course, sharing. So if I'm sharing, people, please do the same and share these episodes with those you care about. Someone that might need to hear it at the right moment in time, and maybe that time is right here, right now. Today, people, is all about discipline, what it might mean for each of us over time, and what it might look like, and how we can harness some of the traits that will make discipline a daily and habitual response to our tasks and challenges that we know we will face along the way on our journey to being the best people in all of our roles we play in life. We will learn from Ryan Holiday today in his book, Discipline is Destiny, and I just admire Ryan Holiday so much. He and his books and his podcast hold a special place in my heart and soul. And of course, if we want to learn about being more disciplined, we must first start with being more curious. To me, so much of the work and the path to better habits, greater insight, and wisdom starts with curiosity. So let's get curious and learn a bit about where Ryan Holiday got his inspiration to write his amazing masterpieces. It really came from his study of Stoicism, a philosophical approach to life, a life of learning and growth and transformation. Now, some of you may hear Stoic and think of the traditional lowercase s Stoic definition, which is the endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint. This is really not at all what Stoicism is all about. Stoicism is the ancient Greek school of philosophy. So it's capital S Stoicism here. And it teaches us virtue, the highest good, and is based on knowledge. And I'll even use Ryan, his definition of Stoicism. In its rightful place, Stoicism is a tool in the pursuit of self-mastery, perseverance, and wisdom, something one uses to live a great life rather than some esoteric field of academic inquiry. And Stoicism, for me, has become a go-to school of reflection and insight, really, and has helped me personally gain a deeper understanding of some of the virtues that we consistently pursue to live a good life. My experience with Stoicism is relatively new, but it gets really fun when you mash up some of the teachings of the Stoics with modern psychology and the science of mindfulness and the long traditions of spiritual teachings, all of it. The integration of these insights and lessons and teachings has truly been a remarkable shift in how I try to learn and be better each and every day. The integration is really how this podcast idea came about. All of the teachings, all of the learning, always leading us back to mindfulness in each of our moments of life, right? Mindfulness, for me, for all of us, really, if you think about it, where it all starts. Mindfulness, where it all ends, right? All we ever have in life is this very moment, right here, right now. And I will, of course, share a quote from one of my favorite Stoic philosophers to help get us moving on to some of the virtues of living a more disciplined life. And this is from Epictetus. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. As far as discipline and the virtue of focus on today's show, I have heard many things about leading a disciplined life and have heard simple yet powerful definitions of what discipline is, what it looks like, even what it doesn't look like, right? And we can start with this thought. So discipline can be seen as doing the things you do not like to do so that you have an opportunity to do the things that you love to do. This is a nice one, right? What if we look at discipline as allowing every action we take to follow our passion in life, our purpose in life? Leading ourselves with question marks again, people, right? That curiosity, the path to a more enlightened state, leading our lives deliberately with more insight and wisdom. This path perhaps is lined with the right questions we ask ourselves and each other, right? And it's even a disciplined approach in asking the difficult questions that helps us on our journey. It takes discipline and many of the other virtues that lead to a more disciplined approach to life to ask ourselves the right questions, to be able to humbly look for the right answers to those questions at the right moment in time. And of course, that time is right here, right now. So today we dive into an incredible book by an incredible author and modern day philosopher, Ryan Holiday. Again, one of my favorite authors and podcasters. He's written numerous bestsellers, including Ego is the Enemy, Courage is Calling, The Obstacle is the Way, and Discipline is Destiny. This last one, of course, being the inspiration for today's episode. However, all of his books that I have had the pleasure of reading have had such an impact on me in my personal and professional life, and his messages that are transmitted from his calling to share ancient Roman philosophy in the Stoic teachings has been quite important to me and presented with such simplicity and elegance. I really, each lesson coming at good timing for me in my life. But you have to be looking for it, people. Head up, right? Being present and mindful of the lessons. He also inspired the writer and creative spirit in me to be unleashed, uncovering, if you will, my authentic creativity that has been yearning to come out, maybe chiseling away at the outer shell and allowing me perhaps to open up the parts of me so that I can share various teachings with you in a unique and helpful way. And we are again reminded of the great factor that timing has on so many things in life. Specifically, here I am reminded of a wonderful maxim. I actually believe coming up on our 1-year anniversary of this podcast right here, right now, I think I used this same quote in episode 1, right? And it's when the student is ready, the teacher appears. All of the books that I have read have taught me something amazing when I have shown up to them eager to learn, ready for insight, looking for and longing for the lessons to apply. And I hope that each of you shows up with a similar vigor and thirst for information and insight into how to be more mindful and present as a student of life. So students, sit up straight or just chill. No worries, but come to this with your open minds and open hearts for learning today, right here, right now. So the outline for today's episode will be to take a handful of the lessons on discipline from Ryan's book, Discipline is Destiny, and see how we can apply them in our lives, what they might mean in your life today while you're listening. What lessons that he shares that can be applied to lead a more disciplined journey in life. Let's continue on with another wonderful quote. Another quote, absolutely, to throw us into the right mindset, to be more disciplined about listening and being open to the message about discipline. And this is the quote that Ryan opens his book with. It is, of course, from one of the great Stoic philosophers, again here, Epictetus. 2 words should be taken to heart and obeyed when exerting ourselves for good and restraining ourselves from evil. Words that will ensure a blameless and untroubled life. Persist and resist. Wow, huh? You could almost just close the book here reading this, right? Maybe turn off the podcast and study this message, but we are great learners here, people. Keep listening, keep reading, and likely we're more disciplined than we even think we are to start this episode. So we resist the urge to put down the book and persist and look for the great messages from Ryan's words brought to you right here, right now, people. And I think as I prepared for this episode, a thought and inspiration about doing a mindfulness intention on discipline came to me, mostly because I enjoy creating them for you. And I thought it might be helpful for each of us to harness the power of discipline in a unique way to be better people here, people. So we'll look out for a mindfulness intention on discipline later this week. So as I had discipline on my mind, preparing for the episode, I was trying to think of what it means to me and how we can think about the concept in a tightly packaged thought, right? Something simple, but makes us think and challenges us. So here is what I came up with about how we can think about discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, for the right reason. The last part here, people, is very meaningful and maybe encapsulates more of a purposeful intention of the work we are doing to be more disciplined. If we consider the why in our work, the why for the what and when and maybe how we do our work, right? Our calling may be more reachable, more fulfilling and meaningful if we have our why aligned with the work we are doing. So I'd just like to have this thought in our mind as we traverse the key takeaways that I'd like to share from Ryan Holiday's masterpiece, right? And again, think of that why as our purpose, right? It's something that is intangible, likely unachievable if we consider its loftiness well enough, right? It's a constant striving for something better while being aligned with values and concepts that keep us focused on that particular path or thing. And I'm going back to Epictetus a lot, and he says, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. I believe, of course, paradoxically even, that discipline itself, among many of the virtues we pursue, is not an end state here. You can't think of it that way. It's more of a beginning state, and we evolve and change and learn and grow into better people, more disciplined people. So, what discipline looked like or felt like at one point will be somewhat different at another point. And this is good, right? It means that we're changing, we're evolving, we're growing, we're getting better. And being mindful and present of this concept would allow us to be less judgmental of ourselves if we feel we have not had a very disciplined day or week or year. So, let's get started on Discipline is Destiny, Ryan Holiday's book. And we're going to talk about 5 key takeaways from this book and how we can lead a more disciplined or productive or fulfilling life if we are aligned, right? So the first key concept here we'll discuss is attack the dawn. And this quote from Seneca will start us out. The day has already begun to lessen. It has shrunk considerably, but yet we still allow a goodly space of time if one rises, so to speak, with the day itself. We are more industrious and we are better men if we anticipate the day and welcome the dawn. Rise and grind, people, right? So maybe you're listening to this and maybe looking for a better approach and start to your days. I can absolutely tell you with many years of personal experience that the incredibly life-changing approach to my day that starts pretty early is to get work done, the right work done for the right reasons before the sun rises, right? One of the writers that Ryan describes in his amazing story says that it is not just being in the light, but being there before it arrives. It is seeing the transition from darkness to light that is somewhat spiritual and invigorating early in the morning. I know for me, having a deliberate routine in the morning of getting some amount of intentional work done, mostly the writing and the idea generation comes strongly to me in the morning hours, the pre-dawn hours, is just really, really helpful to me. It's just been really life-changing. I'd also recommend that you pick up and study a book called The 5 a.m. Club. I always think of that book when I talk about a morning routine. And it has some incredible insight into the power of a morning routine. Really scratch that. It is a morning ritual. That's a beautiful book. And going back to Ryan, he describes the many stories of how the world was conquered and changed and made better by those who rose early with an intentionality of doing the hard work when the rest of the world was not awake. And he reminds us, and I remind you right here, right now, that the discipline to do the hard work is what carried those people on into their long day ahead. It is powerful, it's energizing, it's invigorating. And Ryan finishes the chapter by also reminding us of how lucky we are to be glad to be awake and be grateful that we are able to wake and do the hard work. He deliberately writes, feel the joy of being able to do what you love. Cherish the time, but most of all, use it. So wake up, work out, walk, pray, meditate, write in your journal, work on that next big thing for you. Discover your purpose, but above all, people, be deliberate and use this time, this precious time that takes us from dark to light wisely. Next up, key concept here from Discipline is Destiny, slow down to go fast. And a quote here from Marcus Aurelius, all you need are these: certainty of judgment in the present moment, action for the common good in the present moment, and an attitude of gratitude in the present moment for anything that comes your way. And some of you may have heard a saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that comes from the U.S. Navy SEALs. It's their slogan. They're calling to move to action in a very deliberate and methodical approach to their work. It reminds us that the haste that we often find ourselves moving with is often a waste of energy and time. Of course, this takes being mindful and present, and as Ryan teaches in his writing, it's about balance. We all think hustling is the way forward, and absolutely sometimes time and speed, they're critical. But the haste we move in must not be at the expense of doing things right, or even worse, doing the right things. Kind of reminded me as I was reading and writing, reminds me of a leadership quote that's out there. And it's never really been attributed to anyone in particular, but management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. So we must be mindful and present in our moments when we must decide to either take the fast track or go down a path with some obstacles. We must remember that going fast is easy, but not always best. So we know when we've talked about taking action and getting started, but be mindful of a balanced approach that may slow you down with a deliberate and methodical mindset, people. Slow down to go fast. Right here, right now. And next up, focus, focus, focus. That's the title of his chapter on focus. And Epictetus writes, and as we begin this journey, you become what you give your attention to. If you yourself don't choose what thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will. And in this chapter, Ryan uses Beethoven as the example of the extreme focus that can really catapult an individual into a state of flow, a state of mastery, a focus perhaps that others deemed too extreme. People often found that Beethoven would disappear and go off to write the musical masterpieces that had suddenly come to him, that he could hardly pay attention in the middle of a conversation, no matter the topic, if he had become overcome with, as he once put it, such a lovely, deep thought that I could not bear to be disturbed. I'll confess, as I've been cultivating the creative work and energy for this podcast right here, right now, and the writing and the reading that I'm passionate about, to consistently create and find inspiration in various teachings and then create some more, I often find myself having this incredible and extreme focus on a particular thought, an idea, an insight that I feel that might escape me. In fact, I was just reading the quote literally in the middle of recording this from Epictetus, that if you don't choose your thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will. I want to do something about social media and everybody gobbling up other people's thoughts. So wow, right? Again, focus. Get back to this, Mike. Get back to this. I feel like I need to run to the computer sometimes, right? Or my phone to get thoughts down for future inspiration and creative work. And one of Ryan's more powerful lines in this chapter that inspired me to write about focus was this: to ignore everything else and to follow a flit of inspiration, or put brain power towards some intractable problem you can't seem to make progress on. This is the mental challenge we have to steel ourselves for. And he writes, in a world of distraction, focusing is a superpower. And of course, if any of these virtues require being mindful and present more than the others, it is this one. How could we focus if we're not able to seize our current moment, be mindful and present in what it is that requires our attention? This is not easy stuff here, people. And Ryan beautifully ends his chapter with this: if it's worth doing, it's worth concentrating on today. It's worth focusing on now. The next concept here, perfectionism is a vice. The Stoics remind us here, we can't abandon a pursuit because we despair of perfecting it. And this is one that we all battle with, right? Some of the things that we aspire to do, we may get stuck thinking or feeling that we're not ready or the work will never be good enough. A standard that we put on ourselves that not many others will. Now, again, there is a balance here. We do not settle for shoddy work, right? We must realize, though, that the work we get done allows us to learn from the work that we are doing. But we must get it done. If we change the mindset up here, that the only way forward is through some challenge or obstacle, we will come out better, smarter or stronger or more insightful than before. But this all happens when we take action, when we decide that we have put in the work with a deliberate and disciplined approach and that we are ready. And Ryan writes here, I love this one, perfect is not just the enemy of the good, but it's the enemy of everything that might come after. If you get stuck, your potential does too. Wow, right? How can we ever hope to be better if we never settle with the good work that we have worked hard to share with the world? And a little secret here, people, no matter how much you enjoy each episode of Right Here, Right Now, I battle with them being okay, a final sort of settling in with, or the episodes being okay enough with that final product that I have created for each of you. I overcome this battle in two ways, really. First, I got to get these done so I can share the work with each of you and all of our loyal listeners, right? And the next thing is, how will I be better at any of this if I get stuck with the standard so high that I'd still be tweaking episode 1 of season 1, right? And here we are, just about a year in, nearing episode 50. None of them perfect, but perfectly created for me to learn and share the good enough parts for you to learn and grow and share. So we must not fall prey to the vice of perfectionism. Yes, show up and do the work and learn and reflect in a mindful and present way and be reminded that your disciplined work is good enough right here, right now. And you will take the lessons of anything that needs work to your next task. I will share with you a profound line from Ryan to help jolt you out of that perfectionist ideal here. This one really hit me. Not trying because you're not sure you can win, you're not sure whether everyone will love it. There's a word for that too. Cowardice. Wow. If that's not powerful enough, trying to get this message more perfect here, perhaps, I came across a poem in a magnificent little book titled Self-Love Poetry by Melody Gottfried that resonated with me and my struggle with perfectionism. And she writes, on the pursuit of perfection, when you embrace your true self, you feel this sense of peace, of not needing to be anything more than you already are. The opposite is true of chasing perfection. It takes you further and further away while never giving you an ounce of satisfaction. So when your head says seek perfection, listen to your heart when it says be yourself. So of course, there's an undertone of self-love here, right? A reminder to be brave enough to be you and share your less than perfect work right here, right now. For this is truly a path to a better version of yourself here, people, right? An uncovering of our most authentic selves. Don't let perfectionism get in the way. And finally, Ryan talks about ruling over the body. To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over, it stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it. And that's from Marcus Aurelius. And I hope these quotes hit you. They hit me as we started learning some of these key concepts and took a deeper dive into them. So here is the story of the Iron Horse. Some of you may know of this story and of the champion ball player that conquered many obstacles to play for nearly 2 decades without missing a game. 2,130 professional baseball games, in fact. This incredible feat of physical stamina, mental fortitude stood as a record for over 50 years. He played 350 doubleheaders. That's when you play 2 games in one day. And it's been said he traveled at least 200,000 miles, mostly by train and bus. The amazing thing to note here is that the Iron Horse, as he became known, never missed a game, not because he was never injured or sick, but because he was a man that refused to quit and pushed his physical limits that all others would have used as an excuse to just sit this one out. And that's really, it's what's somewhat here disappointing for this particular record that stood for so long is that it completely overshadows the stellar career he had, posting numbers and statistics that put him in a class with the likes of Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, and other legends of a long ago era. He was also the first player in baseball to have his number retired. For those 17 years, he was the iron horse of sports. Even his trainer was heard complaining in jest. If all ball players were like him, there wouldn't be any job for trainers on the clubs. And perhaps that the seemingly unimaginable feat of his record, right, was one reason why his talent and other accomplishments were overshadowed. But I think there's another. It may have also been because of this person's ultimate humility. A reporter would write about him unspoiled, without the remotest vestige of ego, vanity, or conceit. To him, the team always came first, even before his own physical well-being and health. He was not at all interested in the credit. And a good example of this is that some of you know maybe the called shot, right? Where Babe Ruth, he's a famous baseball player on the Yankees, he pointed out into the outfield, basically telling the pitcher that he was going to hit a home run, and then he did, right? Wow. But does anybody know that in that same game, this person that we're talking about hit 2 home runs in that game? He didn't call them, no bravado, just did what he did. And there is so much to say about a man like this who endured pain and injury and mental struggle throughout his career. It is said that he had broken nearly every one of his fingers and still played. He was knocked unconscious by a pitch thrown at him that would have put others out for at least a week, and he still played. But his story is so remarkable in not only how he endured and persisted throughout his streak, but also in how his streak finally came to an end. And I'm going to read a few paragraphs from Ryan Holiday's book that describes the tragic beginning of the end of a remarkable career, an even more incredible life. There's an old story about Lou Gehrig's first game with the Yankees when he started his streak. He was supposedly hit with a ball that day too. "Do you want us to take you out?" the manager asked. "Hell no," Gehrig was said to have exclaimed. "It's taken me 3 years to get into this game. It's going to take more than a crack on the head to get me out." 17 years later, something finally did take him out, and it was far more serious than a wild pitch. For someone who had so long been used to being in control, it must have been bewildering to Gehrig when his body stopped responding as it always had. Slowly, but noticeably, his swing wasn't as fast. He struggled to pull on his mitt. He fell down while putting on a pair of pants. He dragged his feet when he walked, yet his sheer will kept him together to a degree that few suspected anything was wrong. For a while, he fooled even himself. Just a sample of Gehrig's schedule in August 1938. The Yankees played 36 games in 35 days. 10 games were doubleheaders. In one case, there were 5 consecutive days of them. He traveled to 5 cities, covering thousands of miles by train. He hit .329 with 9 home runs and 38 RBIs. For an athlete to do this without missing a game, without missing an inning, in their mid-30s is impressive. But Lou Gehrig did it as the early stages of ALS ravaged his body, slowing his motor skills, weakening his muscles, and cramping his hands and feet. It would be nearly a full additional season before Gehrig's body fully gave out. The streak had taken on a life of its own. It kept going. Gehrig gutting out hits and runs despite the occasional but uncharacteristic error on the field. But a man who knows his body, even as they push and push and push past their limitations, also has to know when to stop. Joe, he said to the Yankees manager on an ordinary May day in 1939, I always said that when I felt I couldn't help the team anymore, I would take myself out of the lineup. I guess that time has come. When do you want to quit, Lou? McCarthy replied. Quit. That horrible word burned. His manager, still thinking they were talking about some date in the future, hoped they'd have more time together. But his body was far too gone. Now, Gehrig replied with certainty, put Babe Dahlgren in. What had changed? After weeks of inconsistent play, Gehrig had fielded a ground ball and made a solid out. It was a play he'd made thousands of times in his career. But his teammates had celebrated like it was one of his series-winning homers. In that moment, he knew he was holding them back. He was lying to himself. And as I searched for a nice way to really leave you all with the message of just how incredibly disciplined a human being Lou Gehrig was, I stumbled upon yet another quote from yet another great Stoic philosopher here, Marcus Aurelius. And he wrote to himself in his meditations, disgraceful for the soul to give up when the body is still going strong. And this hit me as I thought about Lou Gehrig. His disgrace that he suffered was quite the opposite, and maybe a worse fate for body and soul to endure. For his body to give up when his soul is still going strong. And surely it was his soul and his heart and his spirit that lifted his body off of the bench and onto the field in his arena on days when we might all have chosen to sit this one out. Right, people? Imagine this. How difficult his last months of his streak and his life must have been, that his body was dying in a soul that was still so vibrant. I have often thought about the terrible disease of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and how one's mind and, of course, their soul is so alive when their body just won't carry their spirit on any longer. A relentless spirit housed within a relentless body until the body begins to relent. It might be like a death of the spirit happening while the body is failing. So those suffering, including the families, endure more than just the one final dying of the body over the last months of suffering. They feel their spirit so alive but unable to shine as darkness afflicts them. And as I begin to wrap up here, people, holiday rites of Lou Gehrig. Most kids like to play sports. Lou Gehrig saw in the game a higher calling. Baseball was a profession that demanded control of, as well as care for, the body, since it was both the obstacle and the vehicle for success. He was a slave to the game who loved the job and remained forever grateful at just the opportunity to play. Right? Some beautiful words again. And his grateful spirit is one of the virtues that helped get him on the field day in and day out. He truly realized just how lucky he was to be able to serve his higher calling, fulfill his purpose, to be the best he could be every day by doing the work when it needed to get done for the right reason, to be the best teammate he could be.
I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
This should be our guiding light in our search for discipline. Find your calling. Manifest your purpose into the spirit of getting out onto your field on your best days and mostly on days when it seems impossible. Do it for your calling. Do it for your team. Do it for your family. Do it for your colleagues. Do it for your friends. Do it, for your spirit deserves your best every day. And so hopefully these lessons within the book were meaningful in how I maybe elevated these lessons into things that you can think about and maybe have to re-listen to some of this and definitely share, right? To each of you, and hopefully the timing was right. I am so lucky to be able to create and share with each of you, and so grateful for your following this show. Please do not forget to share the show and the episodes. I would be grateful for you to share them all, but especially those that resonate with you. Sharing them with those who may find that they hear and feel what they need to hear and feel at just the right moment in time. And we all know that time is right here, right now. Please look out for the accompanying mindfulness intention on discipline that will be released in about a week. I'm excited to share that as well. Thank you all for listening and sharing and awakening to attack the dawn and sharpening your focus and slowing down and braving your less than perfect notions and ruling over your body. We'll see you next time, right here, right now. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time, right here, right now.